The mansion keys felt heavier than they should, as if the iron itself remembered the weight of secrets kept beneath stone and soil. I gripped them tight enough to leave marks in my palm, watching through the taxi window as Cinderstone Reach emerged from the mountain mist like something out of a gothic nightmare. Rain streaked the glass, turning the world outside into a watercolor painting of grays and blacks. Each mile up the winding road took me further from Greyport's gleaming towers, further from the life I'd thought I was building, further from the rejection that still sat, like broken glass in my chest. Unremarkable, uninspired, unwilling to make the hard choices. The words had been spoken in Vaughn Blackridge's office 3 days ago. Spoken, not whispered. Because men like Vaughn didn't need to whisper when destroying someone beneath them. The other junior associates had pretended not to hear, their eyes fixed on their desks as I'd stood there in the suit I'd bought on credit, holding the promotion packet I'd worked 18-hour days to earn. Vaughn had leaned back in his leather chair, the one that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and smiled that smile that never reached his cold slate eyes. Your work is adequate, Holloway, but Clearwater Assembly needs lawyers with fire, with vision. He'd tapped my file with one manicured finger. You have neither. You're a placeholder, a warm body filling space until someone better comes along. I'd wanted to argue, wanted to defend myself, but the words had died in my throat the same way they always did when confronted with authority, with certainty, with people who seemed so sure of their place in the world. So I'd nodded, thanked him for his time, and walked out with my dignity in tatters. That had been the professional death. The personal one had come 24 hours later. Celeste had been waiting at my apartment, her designer luggage already by the door. She'd rehearsed what she was going to say. I could tell by the way she delivered it, smooth and practiced, like closing arguments in a case she'd already won. You're going nowhere, Kieran, and I can't afford to go nowhere with you. I need a partner with ambition, with drive, someone who knows what they want and takes it. She'd slid the engagement ring across my kitchen counter, the diamond catching the light one last time. You're a good man, but good isn't enough. And just like that, I'd lost the career and the future I'd been building for 3 years. Lost the woman I'd imagined growing old with. Lost the carefully constructed identity of Kieran Holloway, rising attorney, husband-to-be, someone who mattered. Now here I was, 26 years old and completely untethered, riding through a rainstorm to claim an inheritance from the grandfather my family had disowned. Silas Holloway. Even the name felt forbidden. My parents had cut ties with him when I was 7. After that single summer visit, I barely remembered. He's dangerous, my mother had said, her voice sharp with something that might have been fear. He's filled your head with nonsense about legacies and destinies. You are not special, Kieran. The sooner you accept that, the better. I'd spent 19 years accepting it, becoming ordinary, keeping my head down, not making waves, and look where it had gotten me. The taxi crested the final hill, and Thornmere Hall came into view. My breath caught despite myself. The mansion stood against the storm-dark sky, like something that had grown from the mountain itself. 4 stories of blackened stone and Gothic towers. Windows like empty eye sockets, the whole structure wrapped in climbing vines that looked less like decoration and more like the forest trying to reclaim what had been stolen from it. Part of the eastern wing had collapsed, leaving exposed beams jutting out like broken ribs. The grounds were overgrown, wild, hostile. It looked exactly like the kind of place where secrets went to die. You sure about this, kid? The taxi driver was watching me in the rearview mirror, his weathered face creased with concern. "That place has been empty for months. No power, no heat. There's a motel back in town. I'm sure." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "This is where I need to be." The lie tasted like ash. I had nowhere else to be. That was the truth of it. He pulled up as close to the entrance as the overgrown drive would allow. I paid him with most of my remaining cash, shouldered my duffel bag, and stepped out into the rain. It was cold, autumn sharp, carrying the scent of wet earth and decay, and something else. Something mineral and old, like air from a cave that hadn't been opened in centuries. The taxi's taillights disappeared down the mountain, leaving me alone with the storm and the mansion and the weight of iron keys in my hand. The lawyer's instructions had been oddly specific. "Your grandfather's will contains unusual stipulations, Mr. Holloway. You must spend at least one night in the residence before any decisions about the property can be made. And you are not, under any circumstances, to enter the East Wing until you've read the journal in his study." Mr. Silas was very particular about the order of things. When I'd asked why, the lawyer had given me a look that was equal parts pity and unease. "I'm just the messenger, son. But if Silas Holloway says something is important, I'd advise you to listen. That man, he knew things, saw things others didn't." Now, standing before the mansion's massive oak doors, I understood why people had called my grandfather mad. This place felt wrong. Not evil exactly, but present, aware, like it had been waiting. The main key turned in the lock with a sound like bones cracking. The door swung inward on hinges that shrieked protest after months of disuse. The sound echoed through what I could see of the entrance hall, a vast space of checkered marble floors, and a grand staircase that split in two directions, ascending into shadow. Dust motes swirled in the gray light filtering through filthy windows. Sheets covered furniture like ghosts frozen mid-haunting. I stepped inside, and the temperature dropped 10 degrees. My breath misted in front of me. The door groaned shut behind me, not slammed by wind, but closed with deliberate finality, and I heard the lock click back into place. For a long moment, I stood perfectly still, heart hammering, every instinct screaming that I should turn around, break a window if necessary, and run back down that mountain road. But run to what? To Grayport, where I'd been deemed inadequate? To Celeste, who'd looked at me like I was already a stranger? To a life that had made it abundantly clear I didn't belong in it? No. Whatever waited for me, in this decaying mansion, it couldn't be worse than the nothing I'd left behind. I found Silas's study on the second floor, behind a door marked with a bronze plaque bearing symbols I didn't recognize. The room was smaller than I expected, lined floor to ceiling with books, their spines cracked and faded. A massive desk dominated the space, its surface covered in papers, maps, and what looked like diagrams of underground caverns, tunnel systems, and there, in the center of it all, a leather journal, new enough that it seemed out of place among the ancient texts. My name was written on the cover in my grandfather's spidery handwriting. "For Kieran, when the world above no longer wants you, remember there is a world beneath." My hands shook as I opened it. The first entry was dated 3 days ago, the day Vaughn had rejected my promotion, the day before Celeste had left. "Kieran, if you're reading this, then I am dead, and you have finally come home. I'm sorry I couldn't prepare you properly. Your parents saw to that. They were terrified of what I might make you see, what I might make you become. They wanted you ordinary, safe, blind to what exists in the margins of the world. But you were never meant to be ordinary, boy. The blood doesn't lie. You are my heir, and whether you accept it or not, You are now the custodian. There is a trap door in the east wing, hidden beneath the floor of the empty room. You'll find the key in the locked box behind the false brick in the fireplace, third from the left, fourth row up. The emblem is inside. You'll know it when you see it. Do not open that door until you understand what it means to be custodian. Do not descend those stairs until you're ready to leave your old life behind completely. Because, Kieran, and I need you to hear this, there is no coming back from what lies beneath. The world below has been waiting for you. The council has been waiting. Marcus has been waiting. And so has the thing that killed me. It knows you're here now. It can smell new blood, new fear. It will come for you wearing familiar faces, speaking with trusted voices. It will offer you everything you think you want. The career, the girl, the respect. If you just walk away from this place, don't listen. You were rejected by the world above because you were never meant to live there. You were meant to stand between worlds, to guard the barrier, to keep the balance. That is what we are. That is what you must become. Read the rest of these journals. Learn what I learned. And when you're ready, when you've accepted what you are, go to the East Wing. The world beneath is calling you home. Silas Holloway, last custodian of Thornmere Hall. I read the entry 3 times, each time hoping the words would make more sense. They didn't. If anything, they raised 1,000 new questions. But one thing was clear. Silas had known about Vaughn, known about Celeste, known that I'd come here broken and lost, searching for anything that might give my life meaning. And he'd left me this, whatever this was. Outside, the rain intensified, hammering against the windows like something trying to get in, or maybe trying to warn me to get out. I looked around the study, at the maps of tunnels that shouldn't exist, at the symbols that looked older than language, at the locked wooden box sitting on the mantel above the fireplace, exactly where Silas said it would be. The emblem is inside. You'll know it when you see it. I thought about Celeste's face as she'd left, Vaughn's dismissive smile, the empty apartment waiting for me in Greyport, if I even still had an apartment after missing this month's rent. Then I thought about Silas's words. You were rejected by the world above because you were never meant to live there. What if he was right? What if everything I'd thought I wanted, the respectability, the career, the normal life, had never been meant for me? Well, what if I'd been trying to force myself into a shape that would never fit? What if there was something else, something more? I crossed to the fireplace, counted the bricks, and found the loose one exactly where Silas had indicated. Behind it, a small cavity. Inside the cavity, a wooden box, its surface carved with the same strange symbols from the study door. It was warm to the touch. Not hot, but alive warm, like it had a pulse. My heart hammered as I lifted the lid. Inside, nestled in faded velvet, lay a bronze medallion on a heavy chain. The moment I saw it, something in my chest responded. A pull, a recognition, like meeting someone you'd known in a dream. The surface was covered in intricate engravings, symbols, patterns, what might have been words in a language I'd never seen, but somehow almost understood. And at its center, a stone that seemed to contain its own light, not reflecting, but generating, pulsing with a rhythm that matched my heartbeat. I reached for it. The instant my fingers touched the metal, the world tilted. Images flooded my mind, vast caverns lit by impossible light, cities carved from living stone, beings that were beautiful and terrible and nothing like human. a barrier of shimmering energy stretching between worlds, and my grandfather standing before it all, the same medallion around his neck, his face aged but strong, his eyes seeing things I couldn't yet comprehend. And then another image. Silas on his knees, throat torn, eyes wide with terror. And standing over him, the vision cut off. I gasped, stumbled backward, the medallion clutched in my hand. It was burning now, scorching hot, but I couldn't let go. Wouldn't let go. Because in that moment, I understood. This wasn't inheritance. This was transformation. This was a door opening to something I'd never imagined, something that had been waiting for me my entire, unremarkable life. And I knew, with a certainty I'd never felt about anything, that if I put this medallion on, if I went to that east wing and opened that trap door, if I descended those impossible stairs, Kieran Holloway, failed attorney, rejected fiancé, the man who wasn't good enough for the world above, would cease to exist. Something else would take his place. The question was, did I have the courage to let him die? The medallion pulsed in my hand, warm and insistent. Outside, lightning split the sky. And somewhere in the depths of the mansion, from the direction of the east wing, I heard it, a sound like stone grinding against stone, like a door opening, like something waking up. The world beneath is calling you home. I fastened the medallion around my neck, and everything changed. The medallion's weight against my chest felt like an anchor, pulling me towards something inevitable. I stood in the study doorway, staring at the key Silas had left in the lockbox, a simple ironed thing labeled East Wing Floor in his spidery handwriting. Every rational instinct screamed at me to leave it there, to walk away, to catch the first bus back to Greyport, and whatever remained of my ordinary life. But the medallion pulsed warm against my skin, and I knew ordinary was no longer an option. The east wing smelled of rot and abandonment. Rain leaked through gaps in the collapsed section, pooling on warped floorboards that groaned under my weight. I found the room at the end of the hall, empty except for dust motes dancing in candlelight, and furniture broken beyond recognition. The floor was bare wood, scarred and stained. Nothing remarkable about it until I looked closer. There, in the center, faint rectangular marks where something heavy had once rested. A rug, maybe, large enough to hide something beneath. I knelt, running my fingers along the boards until I found it, a seam so precise it was nearly invisible. The trap door. I fitted the key into a lock I hadn't noticed, felt the mechanism click, but when I pulled, nothing moved. The wood might as well have been part of the mountain itself. Then the medallion flared hot against my chest. I pressed my palm flat against the trap door, and light erupted from beneath, golden, ancient, alive. The wood groaned, not with age, but with something like recognition. The trapdoor lifted as if weightless, revealing stone stairs that descended into depths that shouldn't exist beneath a mountain mansion. The stairs were carved from rock that seemed to glow from within, veins of blue-green bioluminescence pulsing like living things. The air rising from below carried scents that had no business existing, ozone and copper and something floral that made my head swim. A voice echoed from the depths, layered and resonant. The custodian returns. The bridge stands. Every survival instinct demanded I run. Instead, I descended. Time became meaningless in that stairwell. Minutes felt like hours. Hours might have been seconds. The stairs spiraled down through solid stone, past layers of earth that pressed in from all sides, past what should have been the mountain's foundation. Down, down, until the stairs opened into a cavern so vast my mind struggled to process its scale. A city, carved from living rock and crystal, stretching into impossible distances. Buildings rose in architecture that predated anything human. Gothic spires merged with structures that seemed grown rather than built, connected by bridges of stone and light. And everywhere, beings moved through streets and spaces, figures with too many limbs, with eyes that glowed, with beauty so terrible it hurt to witness. You see them as they are. The voice came from beside me. I spun to find a woman watching me with eyes the color of fresh blood. She was tall, scarred, dressed in leather that looked centuries old, and when she smiled, I saw fangs. The emblem shows you truth. Most humans who stumble down here see only shadow and nightmare, but you see us clearly. What are you? My voice cracked on the question. Rowan Flint, second to Marcus Stone Warden, and currently responsible for keeping you alive long enough to meet the council. She gestured toward the crowds, who'd stopped their business to stare at me with expressions ranging from curiosity to hunger. Walk close. Try not to look anyone directly in the eye, and whatever you do, don't accept any gifts. She led me through streets that made no logical sense. Gravity seemed optional here, with some buildings clinging to cavern walls, others suspended in space by means I couldn't comprehend. Beings watched our passage with ancient eyes, whispering in languages that made my teeth ache. The council chamber stood at the cavern's heart, a perfect circle carved from a single piece of obsidian, polished to mirror smoothness, with 13 thrones arranged around a central dais. And on that dais, covered in white cloth, a body. Kieran Holloway. The voice that spoke my name carried centuries of weight. The man on the largest throne rose, tall, silver-black hair falling past his shoulders, eyes like polished steel, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. I am Marcus Stone Warden. Your grandfather served as custodian for 43 years. 3 days ago, he was murdered defending the barrier between our worlds. He gestured, and the cloth lifted away. Silas. What remained of him? Throat torn out, flesh gray, eyes frozen in an expression of absolute terror. The medallion around my neck burned hot enough to sear skin. The barrier exists because of 2 anchors, Marcus continued, his voice gentle despite its power. The mansion above, physical, unyielding, and the custodian below, human will, human choice. Your grandfather maintained that will for decades. Now you must take his place, or both worlds will fall. Fall to what? I managed. The Voidborn. A different voice now, a creature of smoke and shadow in one of the other thrones. An entity of pure chaos that feeds on reality's dissolution. It murdered Silas to weaken the barrier. Now it hunts 3 targets: the mansion, the council, and you. Marcus stepped closer, and I felt the weight of his presence like atmospheric pressure. The Voidborn can become anything. Anyone. It wears faces like masks, speaks with stolen voices. In 7 days, at the lunar eclipse, it will have enough power to complete the sundering ceremony, to collapse the barrier entirely and unleash my world upon yours. Why? The question came out as a whisper. Why me? Blood, Rowan said flatly. The emblem bonds to custodian bloodlines. You're the last Holloway. You're the only option. I can't. I'm not. But the medallion pulsed against my chest, and suddenly I was somewhere else, seeing something else. Cities burning, humans screaming, Supernatural beings pouring through tears in reality like locusts. Civilization collapsing under the weight of predators humanity had forgotten existed. 7 billion people, helpless. The vision released me, and I was gasping, on my knees on cold obsidian. "Your grandfather died buying time," Rowan said quietly. "Time for you to arrive, to learn, to become what we need. Don't waste his sacrifice." Marcus extended his hand. 7 days. Give me 7 days to teach you what Silas knew. Then decide. The medallion burned. The barrier called. Every part of me that wanted to run, to refuse, to return to the simple failure of my old life, warred with something deeper. A sense that maybe, finally, I'd found the thing I was actually meant for. 7 days, I whispered. Then I decide. Marcus's smile was sad, knowing. You've already decided. The emblem wouldn't bond to someone who would refuse the call. The ascent back to the mansion passed in a blur. When I emerged, the trap door sealed behind me with a sound like a door closing on my former life. I was covered in sweat, trembling, my mind trying to process impossible things. Then I saw it, reflected in the dark window, illuminated by lightning. A figure standing in the rain outside. Tall, familiar, wearing Silas's face. The medallion erupted in scorching heat. The figure smiled, showing too many teeth, and melted into shadow. The hunt had begun. Dawn found me surrounded by my grandfather's journals, candles burned down to stubs, my eyes aching from deciphering his cramped handwriting. Silas had documented everything, decades of knowledge about the barrier, about the realm beneath, about what it meant to be custodian. The emblem responded to intention, he'd written. Will it hot for danger, cold for peace, and it could pull me through space itself to barrier weak points when reality started to tear. I practiced with shaking hands, focusing on the medallion, until it grew warm, then cold, then warm again. The power felt vast and alien, like I'd been handed the controls to something I barely understood. In a hidden panel behind Silas's desk, I found his weapons cache, silver blades that hummed with strange energy, iron rounds for a revolver I'd never fired, salt in mason jars labeled with symbols I couldn't read, tools for fighting monsters, but nothing about fighting something that could wear any face, speak with any voice, be anyone at any time. The knock came at midnight. I froze at my makeshift bed in the study, heart hammering. The mansion had been silent for hours, just rain and wind and the settling of old wood. The knock came again, desperate, insistent. "Kieran!" The voice sent ice through my veins. "Kieran, please, I need help!" Silas. I crept to the foyer, looked through the peephole with trembling hands. There he stood, soaking wet, blood on his shirt, the scar on his left hand visible as he pounded on the door. Every detail perfect, every mannerism exactly right. "They took me," he gasped. "The council. They weren't what they seemed. I escaped, but they're coming. You have to let me in. You have to trust me." My hand moved toward the doorknob. This was my grandfather, the man who'd left me everything, who'd believed in me when no one else had, the man whose body I'd seen. The emblem erupted in searing heat. I stumbled backward as the figure outside changed. Silas's face melted like wax, bone structure shifting, reforming into something with too many joints, too many teeth, eyes that were windows into absolute nothing. The voice that emerged was layered, harmonics that shouldn't exist in human throats. Clever boy, but I have so many other faces to wear, So many people you'll want to trust. How long before you make a mistake?" Then it was gone, vanishing into rain and shadow like it had never existed. I didn't sleep. By morning, news from Cinderstone Reach had turned grim. Mass nightmares plaguing the town, people waking screaming, 3 already catatonic. I felt it through the emblem, a weakening in the barrier like a wound spreading infection. The Voidborn was attacking from both sides, eroding reality through fear. The medallion pulled hot against my chest, and suddenly I was falling through space, reality twisting, landing hard on obsidian floor in the council chambers. Marcus and the others were already assembled, voices raised in argument. "The human world is compromised," a figure of living shadow snarled. Thorn Ashcroft, one of the faction leaders. "We should seal the barrier from our side. Protect ourselves. Let humanity deal with its own nightmares." Marcus's response was cold steel. "We exist in balance. Their survival is our survival. If humanity falls, the barrier falls, and then where will you hide, Thorn?" Rowan found me in the chaos, pulled me aside to a training chamber where the walls were scarred from centuries of combat. "The Voidborn is cunning, not strong," she said, pressing something into my hands, a dagger of meteoric iron that felt wrong in ways I couldn't articulate. "If it manifests physically, you can kill it, but first you have to make it reveal itself. 1 strike, Custodian. You'll only get 1. They assigned me a bodyguard, Cormac Stone, a werewolf warrior with intelligent eyes and movements too fluid to be human. He spoke little, watched everything, and I couldn't shake the paranoia. Was this protection, or was the Voidborn now inside my inner circle, waiting for the perfect moment? Every interaction became a test. Every friendly face a potential mask. I was drowning in suspicion, exactly as the entity wanted. Marcus performed the ritual at midnight, his blood mixed with mine, chanting in languages older than civilization. "This will hurt," was all the warning I got before reality shattered, and I was falling into the collective unconscious of Cinderstone Reach. The dream realm was a twisted reflection of the town. Buildings stretched into impossible angles, streets looped back on themselves, and everywhere people's fears manifested as physical things. Shadows with teeth, memories with claws, regrets that walked on human legs. I followed the thread of wrongness deeper, until I found it. The Voidborn, a shifting mass of stolen faces, wearing 1,000 identities at once, whispering poison into sleeping minds. It saw me and laughed with my mother's voice, my father's, with Celeste's. I ran through nightmare landscapes, past manifestations of terror, the iron dagger burning cold in my hand. When I finally got close enough, I struck. The blade bit deep, and the thing screamed. A sound that shattered dream glass and sent me tumbling back to consciousness. But it left a message, written in blood across the walls of my mind. "I know who you love. I will wear her face next." I woke gasping in the mansion, and found Celeste sitting in Silas's study, looking exactly as she had the day she left me. "Kieran," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. I never should have left you. Can you forgive me?" Every word sounded genuine, every gesture heartbreakingly familiar. The emblem was silent, no heat, no warning, nothing. She reached for my hand, and I saw it, just for a moment, the shadow behind her eyes, the wrongness in her smile. I drove the iron dagger toward her heart. She caught my wrist with inhuman strength, bones grinding. "Wrong guess, Custodian. her voice layered with that horrible harmony. But so close. How will you ever know for certain? She threw me across the room like I weighed nothing and vanished through the window. Hours later, my phone rang. Celeste's voice, confused and angry. Why are you sending me these insane messages about staying away from the mansion? Kieran, are you having a breakdown? She was in Greyport. Safe. Real. Had never come here. The Voidborn was pushing me toward paranoia, toward a place where I'd trust no one, see threats everywhere, destroy real relationships because I couldn't tell truth from lies. Marcus came that night, entering through the trap door with Rowan and Cormac. We stop reacting, he said, spreading Silas's journals across the desk. We start hunting. The Voidborn must have a true form, a place it retreats to between disguises. The between, I said, finding the passage in Silas's notes. The space within the barrier itself. That's where it lives, where it's eroding everything from within. Entering the between is fatal, Rowan said flatly. Anything without an anchor in both worlds gets unmade. Marcus studied me with those ancient eyes. But you're the custodian. You are the anchor. Your grandfather tried once. It nearly killed him. But he was old, weakening. You're young, bonded to the emblem in your prime. You might survive. You're asking me to walk into the space between existence and non-existence to fight something that can be anything, I said. And I've been this job for 3 days. Rowan's smile was sharp. Yes, but you're the only one who can. I wanted to refuse, wanted to run. Instead, I heard myself say, I need 1 more day to prepare. They left through the trap door as dawn approached. I collapsed into fitful sleep, dreaming of faces melting and voices lying and trust dissolving like salt in water. The emblem burning woke me. A figure stood at the foot of my bed, backlit by moonlight. Marcus Stonewarden, expression grave, voice urgent. Kieran, listen carefully. We have a traitor in the council. Come with me now, and I'll explain everything. I gripped the iron dagger beneath my pillow. The Marcus figure smiled. Or perhaps you're learning. Good. But tell me, custodian, how will you know when it's really me? The question hung in the darkness like a noose, and I had no answer. I didn't follow the Marcus figure. Instead, I retreated to Silas's study and activated every ward my grandfather had documented. Salt lines, iron filings, symbols carved into door frames with the iron dagger. The thing outside watched through the window with Marcus's face, smiling that knowing smile, before dissolving into shadow. By dawn, the real Marcus arrived through the trap door, and I met him with the blood ritual Rowan had taught me. A silver needle, a drop of his blood, words in a language that made my teeth ache. The blood glowed gold, genuine. Marcus's fury was a physical presence. The Voidborn appeared as me last night, to 3 different council members, giving contradictory orders. He slammed his fist on the desk, cracking the wood. Brennan Cole attacked Wren Ashford, nearly killed her, believing she was the enemy. We're fracturing from within, exactly as it wants. Thorn? I asked, though I already knew. Calling for my removal. Says the Vampire King has lost control, that we need new leadership. Marcus's laugh was bitter. Perhaps he's right. The emblem pulsed against my chest, showing me the barrier, and the cracks spreading through it like a diseased tree. The Voidborn was attacking everywhere at once. Above, more townspeople had fallen into nightmare comas. 2 had died, their minds simply gone. Below, the council chambers bore scorch marks from assassination attempts, and the faction leaders barely spoke to each other, each convinced the others might be compromised. I couldn't be in both places at once. The decision felt like tearing myself in half. My Aunt Mara and Uncle Edmund had arrived that morning, claiming they'd come to help settle Silas's estate. They'd cut ties with him decades ago, called him dangerous mad. But now they stood in the foyer, faces grave, offering assistance. "Guard the mansion," I told them, hating the doubt in my voice. "If anything tries to enter, salt and iron. Don't let anyone in, no matter who they appear to be." Mara's hand on my shoulder felt genuine. "We failed your grandfather. We won't fail you." But as I descended to the realm below, the emblem whispered unease. Why now? Why them? Dr. Vesper was waiting in Marcus's library, a human woman, middle-aged, with supernatural sight that let her perceive the barrier's structure like I could. Silas had trusted her completely, his journals full of references to her research, her insights. "The Between," she said, spreading ancient texts across the obsidian table. "It's not a place, exactly. More like the seam between existence and non-existence. Your grandfather discovered it decades ago, tried to enter once. It nearly killed him. But I'm bonded to the emblem in my prime," I said, repeating Marcus's words. "I might survive. You'll need an anchor, a ritual using blood from someone you trust completely." Her eyes met mine. "Who do you trust, Kieran?" The answer should have been immediate. Instead, I felt the weight of paranoia settle like lead in my chest. Marcus? Maybe. Rowan? Perhaps. But completely? Absolutely? After watching the Voidborn wear every face I'd ever known? "I don't," I whispered. "I don't trust anyone anymore." Dr. Vesper's expression was sympathetic. "Then we use Silas's blood, preserved from his body. It's not ideal, but the custodian bond runs deep. It might be enough." Something about that suggestion made the emblem flicker cold. But what choice did I have? The eclipse was tomorrow night. The sundering ceremony would begin. We were out of time. The attack came at midnight. Above, I felt it through the emblem. The mansion surrounded by townspeople with eyes gone black, moving in perfect unison like puppets on strings. Mara and Edmund's panicked voices echoed through the mental link the medallion provided. Below, the council chambers erupted in chaos. Shadow creatures poured through tears in reality, claws and teeth, and impossible geometries made flesh. The emblem burned so hot it seared through my shirt, branding my skin. Marcus's voice in my mind. "Save the mansion, the anchor point. If it falls, everything falls." My hand moved toward the medallion, ready to teleport above. Then I stopped. I looked deeper, using the sight Silas had documented, seeing the barrier itself. The real damage wasn't above. The mansion was warded, protected by decades of my grandfather's work. But below, the council was the actual target. If the leaders fell, if the advocates for balance died, the barrier would collapse from within. I trusted my instinct and fell through space. The council chambers were a battlefield. Marcus fought with desperate fury, Rowan at his side, Thorn's faction trying to hold the line against shadow creatures that shouldn't exist. But something was wrong. Marcus was fighting with his right hand. I'd noticed in Silas's journals that he was left-handed, had been for centuries. The fake Marcus's voice echoed in my memory. "How will you know when it's really me?" I looked closer, and there, in the center of the chaos, Dr. Vesper stood chanting, hands outstretched, maintaining the tears in reality, feeding power to the creatures. "Silas trusted you." The words ripped from my throat. Her head turned, and her smile was wrong, layered with harmonics that didn't belong in human mouths. Silas was a fool. He thought balance could last forever. The Voidborn's voice poured from her lips. I will bring the sundering. I will remake both worlds in beautiful chaos. She shifted, face melting, reforming. Silas, his throat torn. Celeste, eyes full of false love. Marcus, commanding and confident. My mother, dead for 10 years, reaching for me, with the same hands that had held me as a child. Each face designed to make me hesitate, and it was working. Rowan screamed a warning, and I moved on pure instinct, driving the iron dagger toward Dr. Vesper's chest. But the Voidborn was faster, the puppet body dissolving like smoke, reforming behind me. The ritual was a trap. It laughed through a dozen voices. Did you really think I'd make it that easy? I understood then. The Voidborn wasn't just in the between. It was eroding the barrier from within, and Dr. Vesper had been positioning me to enter using a flawed ritual that would have torn me apart, leaving the barrier completely undefended. You can't win by fighting. Marcus, the real Marcus, fighting left-handed now, shouted over the chaos. It's not here, just the puppet. Then I go to where it is. I pressed the emblem against the obsidian floor, against the barrier itself, feeling the cracks and fractures, the places where reality was thin. You'll die. Rowan grabbed my arm. You need the anchor ritual. I am the anchor. The understanding came like light through breaking clouds. That's what the custodian is. That's what my grandfather understood too late. The emblem pulsed in response, and I felt it. The connection to both worlds, the bridge I carried inside myself. Not a ritual, not blood magic, just will and choice, and the bond Silas had passed to me. I pressed harder, and reality cracked open. Golden light poured through, mixed with absolute darkness, and I stepped into the between. The transition was agony. My body existed and didn't exist, stretched across dimensions that had no names. Time became meaningless. I saw Silas's death, my own arrival, the moment millennia ago when the barrier was first forged by custodians whose names were lost to history. And there, at the center of everything, where light and darkness met and consumed each other, the Voidborn's true form. Not a monster, a man in a custodian's coat, face hollow with centuries of madness, surrounded by dying light that had once been reality itself. It spoke with a voice like the universe ending. Welcome, successor. You're just in time to witness the end. Above and below, in both worlds simultaneously, the eclipse began. The between existed in all moments, and no moment simultaneously. I stood on nothing and everything, surrounded by light that was also darkness, reality folding in on itself in ways that should have shattered my mind. But the emblem held me together, an anchor in chaos, and I faced the thing that had been hunting me. Aldrin. That was his name, though he'd worn it so long ago he'd almost forgotten. He looked human still, or the memory of human, gaunt, hollow-eyed, wearing a custodian's coat that had rotted to threads over centuries. The light that surrounded him was dying, reality itself sick with his presence. I was like you once, he said, and his voice was singular here, unmasked. Tired beyond measure. Young, idealistic, determined to prove I could bear the burden. His laugh was broken glass. I failed. A moment's weakness. A crack in my concentration, and the barrier fractured. 3 humans died when supernatural predators slipped through. Just 3. He gestured, and the between showed me visions. The council's judgment. Marcus younger, but no less absolute. The sentence delivered with cold finality. Eternal imprisonment in the space between worlds, where Aldrin would serve as a living seal, his suffering the price of his failure. Centuries, Aldrin whispered. Alone in this place where time means nothing and everything. Watching reality flow past, unable to touch it, unable to end it. They made me this. His form flickered, showing the monster beneath, all teeth and rage and endless hunger. And now I will unmake everything they built. The visions continued, and I saw them, other custodians throughout history, each one eventually broken by the weight of two worlds. Some went mad. Some simply gave up. All of them discarded when they could no longer serve, their sacrifices forgotten. You'll fail too, Aldrin said softly. They all do. And when you fail, they'll seal you here with me. It's what they do to inconvenient martyrs. The emblem burned against my chest, and I understood the impossible choice before me. Destroy Aldrin. But he was part of the between now, woven into the barrier itself. Killing him might collapse everything. Destroy the barrier, end the threat, but unleash both worlds upon each other in catastrophic collision. Or find another way, something Silas had never documented, something unprecedented. Above and below, I felt the eclipse reaching totality through the emblem's connection. Reality shuddered. You're not evil, I said, and meant it. You're in pain. Aldrin's smile was ancient and sad. Pain and evil become indistinguishable after enough centuries. It doesn't matter what I was. This is what I am now. He raised his hands, and the sundering ceremony began. Reality tore. I felt it through the emblem like my own flesh splitting. The mansion above crumbled, stone cracking, wards failing. The council chambers below fractured, obsidian shattering, supernatural beings screaming as the barrier collapsed around them. Aldrin was right. I couldn't destroy him. Couldn't destroy the barrier. Couldn't win this fight the way Silas would have tried. So I chose something else entirely. Come into me, I said, pressing the emblem hard against my chest. Share my humanity. Find rest. Aldrin froze. That will destroy you. The between cannot exist within a living being. You'll fragment, dissolve, become what I am. But I'm the custodian. The understanding came like dawn breaking. I'm already between worlds. The emblem made me a bridge. Maybe that's what we're meant to be. Not enforcers, not martyrs, but bridges, living connections. I opened myself fully, not fighting, not resisting, just offering. Offering what Aldrin had been denied for centuries. Human warmth, human connection, an end to isolation. The Voidborn's essence poured into me like ice water in my veins. Agony doesn't describe it. I experienced every moment of Aldrin's imprisonment, centuries compressed into heartbeats, the loneliness that ate away at sanity like acid, the rage that calcified into permanent madness, the desperate, futile attempts to escape that left him more broken. Each time. I felt my sense of self fragmenting, reality and unreality mixing, until I couldn't tell where Kieran ended and Aldrin began. But the emblem held. It had been preparing for this, I realized. Every custodian who'd worn it, every sacrifice, every burden, all of it stored in the medallion's bronze, waiting for someone willing to truly bridge worlds instead of merely guarding them. The emblem didn't just connect me to the barrier. It made me part of it. Living. Flexible. Evolving. I absorbed Aldrin's power without his madness, drawing the pain out like poison from a wound, offering in return everything he'd lost. Purpose, connection, peace. His essence integrated with mine, and suddenly I could perceive both realms simultaneously. Could see the barrier not as a wall, but as a living membrane, responsive and aware. The between stabilized. The barrier healed, but it was different now. Not rigid and brittle like Silas had maintained it, but flexible, breathing, alive with my will. I fell through space, through reality reforming around me, and knew nothing more. Consciousness returned in fragments. Voices first. Marcus, worried. Rowan, furious. Others arguing, debating, some calling for my death before I could become the next Voidborn. Then sensation, cool obsidian beneath me, the weight of the emblem against my chest, and something wrong with my vision. I opened my eyes. Marcus and Rowan leaned over me, relief flooding their ancient faces. But I saw them differently now. Saw the supernatural energy that animated Marcus, the dual nature of Rowan's vampire soul, the threads of reality that connected them to the realm below. 3 days, Marcus said softly. You've been unconscious for 3 days. What did you do? I sat up slowly, and Rowan held up a mirror. My reflection looked back with mismatched eyes, one brown, one silver, like polished moonlight. And beyond my reflection, I could see the barrier itself, threads of light connecting everything, pulsing with life. I made a choice my grandfather never could, I said, and my voice carried harmonics that hadn't been there before. Not the Voidborn's wrongness, but something else. Something new. I accepted the whole burden, not just the duty. Dr. Vesper was there, pale and shaking, with no memory of her possession. The Voidborn had been controlling her for months, feeding through her supernatural sight, positioning me exactly where it wanted me. She wept when they told her what she'd done. Above, Mara and Edmund reported the mansion damaged, but standing. They'd fought off the possessed townspeople, but when I saw them through the emblem's sight, I sensed their fear. Not of what I'd done, but of what I'd become. Something no longer entirely human, no longer entirely comprehensible. The council convened formally, and I stood before them. Vampire lords, werewolf alphas, fey queens, shadow weavers, all ancient and powerful. They recognized me as custodian, but there was distance now. I wasn't one of them, wasn't one of humanity either. I was the bridge, and bridges belonged to neither side. Thorn Ashcroft watched from the shadows, his expression unreadable, and I wondered what he was planning. Celeste came to the mansion a week later, the real one, having heard about supernatural incidents in Cinderstone Reach. She looked at me with my mismatched eyes, the way reality bent slightly around me, the threads of light only I could see, connecting everything. "You're not the man I knew anymore," she said, and there was no accusation in it, just truth. "No," I agreed, "I'm not, and I'm okay with that." She left without anger, without regret, and I felt only relief. The old life, the old dreams, they fit someone else, someone I'd never really been. I'd found something that mattered more. I started my own journal that night, separate from Silas's. The custodian doesn't have to be what it was. The barrier doesn't have to be rigid. There's another way. Evolution, not preservation. I'll find it. And I began making changes. Selected humans brought below to see the truth. Supernatural beings allowed controlled access above. The mansion transformed from guard post to embassy, a place where both worlds could meet safely. Marcus watched my experiments with cautious approval. Your grandfather maintained. You're transforming. I hope you're right. 3 months of peace followed. Purpose I'd never had in my old life. Direction. Meaning. Then, one night, the emblem did something it had never done before. It grew cold. Not absent of temperature, but actively freezing, burning my chest with ice instead of fire. At the same moment, people in Cinderstone Reach began vanishing. Not dying, not harmed, just erased from reality as if they'd never existed. Marcus materialized in the study, face grave. The council chambers are sealed. I can't reach the other leaders. Something is blocking communication from inside our realm. The emblem showed me a vision, and my blood turned to ice. Entities of pure geometric order, the opposite of Aldrin's chaos, moving through dimensions beyond the between. They viewed my flexible barrier as corruption, as error requiring correction. What did you do, Kieran? Marcus asked. I forged my own path, I whispered, watching something vast and crystalline turn its attention toward Earth. And now something else has noticed. The hunt had begun again. But this time, I was ready. They called themselves the Architects, and they came with the cold precision of mathematical inevitability. Entities of pure cosmic order, existing as living geometry, perceiving reality not as experience, but as equations requiring correction. Where the Voidborn had been chaotic destruction, the Architects were sterile perfection. No growth, no deviation, no messy unpredictability of choice. And they viewed my flexible barrier as corruption that needed to be eliminated. I understood it the moment the emblem showed me their nature. Silas's rigid maintenance had kept them satisfied. The barrier had been predictable, stable, unchanging for decades. But I'd made it alive, responsive, evolving. To the Architects, that was error. And errors required correction. The council chambers remained sealed behind crystalline structures of perfect geometric angles that hurt to look at directly. Marcus was trapped outside with me, Rowan, and the other leaders imprisoned within. And no amount of supernatural power could break through. The Architect's correction field blocked everything. Telepathy, magic, even the emblem's ability to teleport. Without the Council's combined power, we cannot fight cosmic entities, Marcus said, staring at the impenetrable seal with centuries of frustration in his eyes. Then I'll find another way. I touched the barrier, feeling it pulse beneath my consciousness like a second heartbeat. That's what I do now, find new ways. The pattern became clear when we investigated Cinderstone Reach. Every vanished person had witnessed something supernatural, a glimpse of the realm below, an encounter with one of Marcus's people, evidence that the hidden world existed. The Architects were erasing witnesses, cleaning up the mess my changes had created. They disappeared at convergence points where the barrier was thinnest, simply deleted from reality like errors in code. Dervesper met us at the mansion, pale and driven by guilt over her possession. The Architects operate on mathematical principles, she said, spreading calculations across Silas's desk. Reality to them is equations. They can't comprehend choice, free will, chaos. We need to think like them to fight them. No. The voice came from the doorway. Thorne Ashcroft stood there, expression cold. You need to think like yourself, custodian. That's what frightens them. Marcus tensed, ready for confrontation, but Thorne raised a hand. I'm not here to fight. You changed the barrier without permission, Holloway. This is your fault. He stepped closer, and I saw something I'd never expected in his eyes. Fear. But if the architects succeed, they'll erase the supernatural realm entirely. Too messy, too chaotic for their perfect order. I'd rather have your chaos than their sterility. At least with you, we still exist. He brought intelligence. The architects had established a physical anchor point in the forest, a crystalline structure manifesting in our reality like a geometric tumor. Destroy it, and their hold would break. Why help me? I asked. Thorne's smile was sharp. Because you're the devil I know. And right now, that's preferable to cosmic annihilation. The architect manifested that night, appearing in the study as living geometry in humanoid form. Its voice was mathematical equations translated into sound, precise, emotionless, absolute. Custodian Kieran Holloway, you have introduced instability. We offer correction. Surrender to restructuring. We will restore the previous custodian template. You will lose your individuality, but serve your function perfectly. Translation. They'd erase everything I was, turn me into an automaton, maintaining the barrier exactly as it had been. No growth, no change, no choice. Refuse, it continued, and we erase this reality intersection entirely. 17 million human casualties. Acceptable losses for cosmic order. I thought of Celeste telling me I lacked ambition. Vaughn saying I was unwilling to make hard choices. Every voice that had told me to be smaller, quieter, more convenient. I'm not going back to being what others want me to be, I said, and the emblem burned hot against my chest. Not Celeste, not Clearwater Assembly, and definitely not you. The architect vanished, and I knew we had hours before they enacted their correction. The plan was insane. The vanished people weren't destroyed. They were stored in the architect's crystalline structure, consciousness preserved, studied, so the entities could better understand humanity and thus better erase it. If I could free them, their combined life force channeled through the emblem might shatter the council chamber seal. Your grandfather would never risk civilian lives this way, Marcus said quietly. I know. That's why it might work. We infiltrated at midnight. Kieran, Marcus, Thorne, and Dr. Vesper, an unlikely alliance bound by necessity. The crystalline structure existed partially outside normal space, a fortress of perfect angles where reality bent to mathematical principles. Inside, corridors shifted according to geometric logic, and I experienced existence as pure mathematics. Every step a calculation, every breath an equation. The vanished people floated in stasis pods, 47 humans suspended in crystal, their terror frozen mid-scream. The architects were learning from them, analyzing human consciousness to better eliminate it. We reached the structure's heart, and the head architect was waiting. It showed me visions, the life I could have had. Junior partner by 30, married to Celeste, 3 children, a house in the suburbs, normal problems, human happiness, no cosmic burden. You were rejected because you were meant for normalcy, it said. Your grandfather's legacy was the anomaly, not you. We can restore that timeline, erase everything since you entered the mansion. For a moment, one terrible, tempting moment, I saw it clearly. The comfortable life, the easy path, the man I'd thought I was supposed to be. Then I touched the emblem and felt the barrier pulse, felt both worlds breathing through me, felt the connection to everyone depending on my choice. Not Silas's choice, not the architect's. Mine. You're wrong, I said. I wasn't rejected because I was meant to be normal. I was rejected because I wasn't done becoming who I'm meant to be. I shattered the stasis pods with the emblem's power. 47 people woke simultaneously, consciousness flooding back, human chaos disrupting geometric perfection. The architects converged to contain the disorder, but I was already moving, gathering that raw human energy, fear and confusion and desperate hope, and channeling it through the medallion. "With me!" I shouted to the terrified civilians. "Trust me!" And impossibly, they did. The beam of pure human chaos struck the council chamber seal like a hammer. Geometric crystal shattered, and Rowan burst through with the other leaders, ancient power unleashed. For the first time in history, humans and supernaturals fought side by side. The vanished people wielding iron and silver from my cache, Marcus and the council dismantling crystalline structures with raw supernatural force, Thorn's faction preventing the architect's escape. Vesper. Identifying weak points in their geometric forms. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't planned. It was improvisation and adaptation and messy human creativity, everything the architects couldn't comprehend or control. And it was working. The head architect, facing defeat, attempted ultimate correction. If we cannot restore order, we eliminate the anomaly. Reality began to collapse. Both worlds started merging catastrophically, the barrier dissolving under mathematical absolute. I felt it through the emblem, felt both realms screaming as they rushed toward mutual annihilation. There was only one solution. I pressed the emblem against my chest and poured everything I had into the barrier, not maintaining it as a wall, but transforming it into something the architects couldn't correct, a living membrane, permeable and responsive, powered not by rigid structure, but by constant conscious choice. My will, moment by moment, holding reality together through pure human stubbornness. The barrier became alive, breathing, growing, evolving. The architect's mathematics shattered against something they couldn't quantify: human will. Their correction field failed, and reality ejected them like antibodies eliminating infection. But the cost hit me immediately. The barrier was tied to my consciousness now, requiring active maintenance every second. I could never stop, never rest completely. I'd bound myself to the role permanently. I collapsed, and Marcus caught me. "What have you done?" "What I had to." The words came out exhausted. The barrier isn't a thing anymore. It's a choice, my choice, every moment. The council convened days later, debating my actions. Thorn, surprisingly, defended me. He saved us all, twice. Marcus added quietly, "The question isn't whether it's wise, it's whether we trust him." After hours of deliberation, they accepted the new paradigm. But I felt their distance. I was something other now, not fully human, not fully supernatural, but the bridge itself. The 47 rescued civilians became ambassadors, the first humans to know the truth and help maintain it. Mara stood among them, tears in her eyes. "We were afraid of what we didn't understand. I'm sorry we failed Silas. We won't fail you." Celeste came one final time, looked at me with my mismatched eyes, and the weight of two worlds visible in my posture. "I understand now why you couldn't come back. You found something more important than what we had." "Not more important," I said gently, "just more necessary. There's a difference." She left without bitterness, and I felt only peace. Marcus found me that night at the trap door, looking down at the glowing realm below. I doubted you, he admitted. You're nothing like Silas. Reckless where he was cautious, creative where he was traditional. But perhaps that's what this era needs. I'm still figuring it out, I confessed. Every day I question if I'm doing this right. That's how I know you are. The moment you stop questioning is when you've failed. I wrote in my journal that night. There's always a choice. I chose this, not because I was worthy or ready, but because someone had to, and I was there. That's all heroism ever is, being there and choosing not to walk away. 6 months of peace followed. The mansion became a true embassy. I trained candidates. Ren, the young Fae, showed promise. Purpose filled my days. The barrier pulsed with life, and I pulsed with it, forever connected. Then Rowan brought news. Supernatural beings are going silent. Entire communities, just gone. Not vanished, consumed. Marcus arrived, face grave. The Devourer. We thought it was legend, the thing that existed before the worlds were separated. The ancient texts say the barrier wasn't built to keep worlds apart. It was built to keep something out. Through the emblem, I felt it. Vast, hungry, ancient beyond measure. Not order, not chaos. Hunger. Pure, endless hunger. I stood at the mansion's highest window, watching the forest. The emblem burned with a new sensation. Warning. This is beyond anything your grandfather faced, Marcus said quietly. We may not survive this. I touched the medallion, felt the barrier pulse with life. We might not, but we'll face it anyway. That's what custodians do. In the distance, the tree line shuddered. Something immense moved in the darkness. Stars flickered and died, one by one. From the realm below came a sound older than language, the sound of ancient terror awakening. My mismatched eyes, one brown, one silver, reflected the coming darkness. I didn't flinch. Let it come. I'm ready, the end and the beginning.